It has definitely been a day for the political history books on Parliament Hill. And joining us now to provide some insight on what has been a tumultuous stretch for Justin Trudeau is former Liberal MP Adam Vaughan. Now, Adam, you worked closely, and thank you for joining us, Adam. You worked closely with the Prime Minister during your time in Ottawa. How difficult would today's decision have been for him? And he's getting a lot of criticism for taking too long to take this step and putting the party in peril as a result.
You know, people talk about, becoming a politician is one of the hardest decisions they have to make in their life. But leaving is just as tough. And it's not so much about sort of the ego that a lot of people criticize the Prime Minister for, the now former Prime Minister, I guess. But it's you've got legacy issues that you want to make sure get across the finish line and are established before you leave, so they don't disappear. The one thing you can do quickly in government is break things. We've seen Pierre Poilievre promise to break everything from the CBC to our climate policies, to the housing strategy, to the daycare program. Those things can take years to put in place and years to finance and negotiate with the provinces and territories and Indigenous nations. But you can break those stuff very quickly. So I think what's been agonizing the Prime Minister is two things. One, the programs that he deeply believes in, like the ones I just listed, he wants to protect. But I think the other side of it is that he has as he said today, he has a fight in him. He wants to take on Poilievre. He does not believe that Poilievre, like many of us who know him, do not believe that Poilievre is going to build a better country. We think he's going to break many of the things that we cherish about Canada.
But back to the original question, do you think that Trudeau waited too long? Has he put the party in greater peril because he didn't give more time for a new leader to get their feet wet?
Absolutely, yes. I think after the last election, Canadians sent a very clear message to politicians that the status quo and more of the status quo was not what they were looking for. What they've been looking for is a fresh approach to a post-COVID environment. The Prime Minister did we all did extraordinary work as Canadians to get through COVID. We had one of the lowest mortality rates in any country in the world, certainly in the G7. But coming out of COVID, there's been a lot of anger sown into politics, a lot of frustration built into society. You've seen it in governments around the world. Incumbents aren't doing well, whether they're right or left or center or, longstanding or new. And I think that the message that was sent clearly to the Liberal Party was make a change. That change had to start at the top. And unfortunately, it took him a long time to get to the conclusion he reached today.
There is an old saying, people don't elect new governments, they vote old ones out. So where does the Liberal Party go from here?
Well, I hope, what those of us who are members are looking at who strikes what kind of a convention and how do we elect the next leader? Is it one member per vote? Is it a caucus vote? Is it a delegated vote with a gathering, a public gathering? What exactly is a post-COVID election going to look like? And those rules, some of them were changed by Trudeau, some of them weren't. His role as a party leader, deserves a bit of criticism here. There is no clear process to replace a leader, and there's no fast process to do it. And that's what happened. He painted himself into a corner. He knocked over the paint can. The paint was going everywhere. He was literally clinging to the curtains. And as a result, whoever becomes the next leader has a very little runway to get a plane off the ground and to get a campaign rolling. And that means that while we might not do as badly with the new leader, we won't do as well as we could have if we'd had the time to do it in a way that staged it better and therefore introduced a new candidate to the public in a way that garnered more support.
Poll after poll, Adam, suggests that Pierre Poilievre has a substantial lead and could easily coast to a sweeping victory in the next election. In your opinion, is there one or two candidates out there in particular who could replace Trudeau and have a chance at winning, or at least not leading them into a devastating loss?
Well, it's sort of the Elon Musks and Donald Trumps and Jordan Petersons and Pierre Poilievres of the world dance in front of the cameras more often, you're going to, I think, have a response, which is going to be, hey, we don't want to break everything. We don't need to strip the government of all its capacity and break the CBC and wipe out the Canada Council. And is water on the deal? Trump has talked about taking Canada's water. Is Poilievre going to go along to get along so his energy policy gets put in place? Are we going to surrender our cultural protections? What does that mean for Quebec? What happens if it's, supply management in the dairy industry? Does that spark a separatism movement in Quebec? It's more than just not liking Trudeau. It's about what kind of country we want to build and what kind of leader we need to get to that place. I think there are a lot of people inside the Liberal Party that I have immense respect for, who aren't being named as possible leadership contenders now. But I think the party ought to take a good long look at it. And the trouble is, with the short timetable the Prime Minister has delivered us, it might not be possible. But someone like Karina Gould, I think there's a need for a generational change. I think it's time for folks who are a lot younger than me. It was one of the reasons I left. I think it's time for a generational change. And the good news about the Liberal Party is that there are a lot of highly talented, very committed, and very wise about government for their age. I think there's a lot of folks in caucus that could step up and surprise people. We know that Carney and Freeland and Frank Baylis, who was a colleague in the first 2015 election, these names are circulating. But I hope that the party has the time and the wherewithal to create a campaign that actually, unlike the Democrats in the States, just doesn't go to sort of, plan B, actually creates some buzz and some interest around some new voices that have perhaps been, if not the backbench of the far end of the table in cabinet. And I think there's potential there. I think someone like Karina Gould changes the game on Poilievre. And I think gives young voters in particular, she's just come back from her second child and maternity leave, gives them an idea that there are different ways to achieve home ownership, different ways to accomplish and pay for childcare than just simply cutting taxes.
All right. Well, whoever wins the leadership isn't going to have a lot of time to make their mark. Adam Vaughan, thank you very much for joining us. We appreciate your analysis.